The lamp trembled before I did, its flicker breaking the stillness like a pulse that refused to quit. Papers were everywhere, half-filled notes, smudged diagrams, the remains of another midnight practice that looked more like evidence of failure than progress. I'd been at this for weeks, tracing the same motions until my wrists ached. Yet the result stayed stubbornly wrong. Effort had weight, but no outcome. Light spilled across the desk, stopping just short of the dark that filled the rest of the room, as if even it knew where not to bother. Earlier that day, he'd laughed softly, kindly, almost as he said, "Some people just have it. You think too much." It wasn't cruel, just final. The kind of sentence that locks the door without slamming it. I'd smiled then, but something inside me quieted, the way air stills before a storm. Now, under the thin hum of the bulb, I studied the mess of my own persistence and saw it differently. Not as failure, but as evidence of control, waiting to be built. The light stayed steady this time, and I let the thought settle. If talent was born, discipline could be built. So I made a quiet promise that no one would ever hear. I'd learn what they believed couldn't be learned. By morning, the room had cooled into a kind of stillness that felt earned. The words from the night before still echoed, but softer now, like ripples losing their edge. People love to fill silence with advice, noise, reassurance. I didn't. I let it stretch. The quiet had a weight to it, and instead of fighting it, I learned to listen. The world kept moving, messages pinged, deadlines pressed. But beneath all that motion, I was building something slower, sharper. He wasn't a villain, not really. My mentor had lived long enough to see effort fail more often than it worked, so he'd mistaken survival for wisdom. He believed talent was fixed because it made disappointment easier to accept. I understood that now, even respected it. But understanding didn't mean agreeing. While others broadcast their opinions, I kept my work under wraps. I tracked small changes, timing, sequence, repetition. Each note logged quietly in a black notebook I never showed. There was a structure forming beneath that silence, a hidden rhythm I couldn't yet name. I only knew it would change everything in 30 days. How, I wasn't ready to say. A year earlier, I would have searched for shortcuts, YouTube tutorials at double speed, half-read threads promising mastery in a week. I confused motion for progress, collecting methods I never finished. The old me wanted applause before competence. The new me wanted silence long enough to hear what actually worked. That contrast, noise chasing noise versus quiet observation, changed everything. I started mapping the problem on a whiteboard, the lamp's light bouncing off its surface like a metronome. Every line meant time, not talent. I gave myself 30 days, 90 minutes a day, no weekends off, a contract signed in dry erase ink. The rule was simple: no skipping, no substitutions. Real mastery, I realized, wasn't about intensity. It was about sustained precision. Ego hates slow progress because it can't be performed, but skill is built in the invisible moments, when no one's watching, when repetition looks like failure. Each session ended with a timestamp and one sentence. What changed, however small? It was forensic, almost clinical. Still, the stakes were clear. If I slipped, if I couldn't prove that method beats natural talent, every doubt they'd voiced would stand confirmed. The light on the board glared back, as if waiting for proof. The whiteboard filled until there was no space left for excuses. Every messy arrow and crossed-out note pointed toward the same truth. Perfection had been the wrong pursuit all along. I used to wait for inspiration to strike, music, mood, momentum, but none of it stayed. Inspiration was loud, unstable, temporary. Discipline was quiet, unglamorous, and loyal. That's where the shift happened. I stopped chasing sparks and started designing systems. I built what I now call my 30-day decision formula. 3 verbs, 1 spine. Observe, imitate, iterate. Observation stripped away ego. I watched people who'd mastered the skill and studied how they moved, not what they said. Imitation translated those patterns into my own body, step by step, without pride. Iteration, the hardest part, meant breaking what I built and refining it daily until error became data, not shame. Every session started with a timer and ended with a note in my ledger. 2:17 a.m. Improved fluidity by 4 seconds. Tiny wins, measurable proof. That ledger became my mirror. It reflected effort, not illusion. If you've ever been told you're not gifted, note this down. Talent is a story people tell to stay comfortable. Systems don't need belief, they need consistency. By day 1, The desk looked like a crime scene, sticky notes lined up like evidence tags, everyone dated and initiated. The first entry read, "Baseline, 72 errors in 15 minutes." I didn't flinch. Failure was the control variable. Each night followed the same ritual. Lamp on, timer set, notebook open, screen recorder running. The rhythm was mechanical at first, but repetition carved calm where panic used to live. By day 5, I'd filled a full page of corrections. Some were tiny, hand placement, breathing pattern, timing micro shifts. Others were blunt reminders. Slow down before you speed up. I deleted my old drafts ruthlessly, saving only the most recent version in a dated folder. The chaos outside, the chatter, the advice, the noise, became background static. Inside the room, I was running an experiment. The spreadsheet came on day 10. Rows for minutes practiced, columns for metrics, color-coded for fatigue. That's when I noticed something no one else had. Progress wasn't linear. It looped, plateaued, then jumped. I started labeling those loops, learning pivots. That small discovery turned the grind into data. Day 17 nearly broke me. Muscle fatigue in my hands, a migraine that pulsed with the rhythm of my timer. I missed a session, then doubled the next day's time to make up for it. The friction didn't feel like failure anymore. It felt like proof that the system worked even under strain. By day 25, the light in the room had changed. The bulb hadn't grown brighter. I had. My notes had shifted from red corrections to calm blue affirmations. Refined, repeatable, ready. The darkness around the desk still pressed close, but it no longer reached me. Day 30 arrived without ceremony. No fanfare, no playlist, just the steady click of the lamp and the scratch of my pen logging one final timestamp. I'd planned a small demo, half to test the skill, half to test myself. A few colleagues gathered, my mentor among them, standing at the back with folded arms, and that patient half-smile, reserved for people about to prove a point he didn't believe in. Expectation whispered failure. I let silence answer. When it began, my body didn't shake. Each movement, each line, each step followed the rhythm I'd memorized through repetition. Precision replaced panic. The same task that had once felt like chaos now unfolded with surgical calm. It wasn't dramatic, it was deliberate, and that was the difference. The air changed before I noticed it. Even the quiet began to listen. I finished in less time than I'd ever managed, accuracy unbroken. No applause followed, just a pause thick enough to count in heartbeats. My mentor's expression shifted, first disbelief, then something close to pride, though restrained, as if he didn't want to disturb the moment. He finally nodded once. "You made it look easy," he said softly. I smiled. It wasn't. The open loop that had started in his doubt began to close in that single silent exchange. Success has a way of making you sloppy. The night after the demo, I caught myself rushing, trying to replicate perfection instead of refining it. By day 33, the spreadsheet looked solid. 20 hours logged past the initial challenge, metrics improving, form steady, but somewhere between the numbers, I stopped learning and started performing. That's when the plateau hit. A full week passed without improvement. My hands felt heavier, the movements less fluid. The lamp above the desk began to flicker again, same as it had on that first night, as if mocking my confidence. Momentum had carried me fast, but not far. I remember staring at the logbook, rows of steady effort, and feeling the quiet sting of stagnation. Midweek, fatigue turned physical. A dull ache ran down my forearm, the kind that warns before it breaks. I iced it, stretched, and still showed up. Stability, not speed. That was the lesson hiding in plain sight. Mastery wasn't acceleration. It was endurance disguised as stillness. So I slowed down deliberately. Fewer reps, sharper focus, more rest. Progress crept back in, shy but steady. The light still flickered, but it never went out, and I understood why. Growth doesn't burn bright. It hums low until it's unbreakable. By the time the room quieted again, the lamp had stopped flickering. Its steady glow cast a circle of light over the desk, everything outside it swallowed in shadow. I caught my reflection in the window, same posture, same space as that first night, but something fundamental had shifted. Back then, frustration had owned me. Tonight, I owned the rhythm. The real test was never the mentor or the onlookers. It was this moment, alone, when no one was watching and there was nothing left to prove. My pulse stayed calm. I ran through the motion once more, slow and deliberate, counting breaths instead of seconds. Every correction I'd once forced now flowed like muscle memory. Effort had turned into evidence. That's when the truth landed. The hidden trick everyone keeps searching for isn't magic. It's measured repetition under emotional neutrality. Consistency so quiet it looks like nothing, until it's everything. I used to believe mastery was about intensity, but it's the opposite. It's about control in the absence of adrenaline. I closed the notebook, placed the pen parallel to the edge, and let the silence settle. The open loop that had begun in doubt closed in peace. The lamp glowed steady, waiting for what came next. The final test came without warning, an invitation to present my work before a small panel, my mentor among them again. The room was brighter than I remembered, every light humming softly overhead, no shadows left to hide in. I set my materials down, steady hands where once there had been tremors. The noise of doubt that used to live in my chest was gone. In its place, a clean, deliberate quiet. When I began, the world seemed to slow. Movements aligned with breath, thoughts synced with precision. It wasn't performance anymore, it was proof. Each step unfolded exactly as practiced, not one gesture wasted. When it ended, there was no applause at first, just a stillness so full it felt like recognition itself. Then came the nod. My mentor leaned back, exhaled through a small smile. "I underestimated you," he said. "No apology, no fanfare, just truth." I returned the smile, calm and certain. "If you ever want to test what you're capable of, try this. 30 days of focus, 90 minutes daily, no shortcuts. Let silence be your teacher." When I looked around again, the light had filled the entire room. The shadow that began this story was gone. Morning arrived before the alarm. For the first time in months, I didn't need the lamp. Daylight spilled across the desk, clean and effortless. The same space that once felt like confinement now looked like the beginning. Artificial light had carried me through the dark, but now the sun made it irrelevant. I glanced at the notebook stacked neatly beside me. 30 days of silence turned into structure. No crowds, no viral moment, just quiet competence in motion that no longer needed permission. I used to think success was something to display. Now I see it's something you transmit quietly, like warmth from a steady hand. Next, I'll teach others to learn without the noise, to build systems, not excuses. That's the real reward. I shut the notebook, stood up, and let the daylight take over. I stopped chasing talent. I started mastering patience.